Maxx Crowley spends much of his day managing properties and assets for SCA Crowley Real Estate Services, but he's got a side gig. Max is president of the Westport Downtown Association. In that role, he oversees events, promotes merchants and restaurants, and tries to juggle the competing demands of retailers and shoppers for everything from parking and signage to trash pickup. It's a huge job, but at just 30 years old, Max has the energy, skills, and insights to do it well. Max, welcome to 06880, the podcast.
Dan, thank you so much.
So I touched on some of your work with the Westport Downtown Association. Can you elaborate on your job? Is there a typical day, and what do you do as president?
It's kind of a unique role. I would say it's similar to property management. Every day is so different. And with my property management, you wake up and there's a fire alarm at buildings or issues here. With Downtown Association, no day is similar. There's always something that we're trying to figure out, problem we're trying to resolve, working with merchants. But there are the sort of the staples of our day that are fairly straightforward. Like you said, you touched on the events. A big portion of what we do is, the events. I feel very lucky and blessed to be a part of that planning process. I have an excellent team behind me. We have a staff who's, we have an events director, marketing, an operations team, and an accounting team that really help make my job easy. But it's a lot of fun. Right now we're in the planning phases of booking all the dates, logistics for our events for next year. Our marquee one being the Fine Arts Festival, which this year will be the 50th, which is incredible. That's just a huge feat to itself, But then we also have more, little items that can come. I shouldn't say little things, but items that come up along the way. You mentioned on the trash collection, that's a piece of it. Managing the, refuse around town, the garbage enclosures. A new tenant comes to town or retailer, introducing them to downtown, getting them set up. So whether it's throwing away their cream cheese from Rye Ridge or their basic just trash from a day at the Gap, we sort of oversee that collection. Comes with a little bit of headaches at times, but we make it work. And then the other piece, which I really enjoy, and maybe it comes from my day-to-day in real estate management and maintenance, is the beautification element. So currently there isn't in place a team that oversees the flowers and the beautification in downtown. So we handle that, and that's the flower pots, hanging baskets, which you've seen. So this summer, unfortunately, did quite the number on our plantings with, I think it was 9 straight weeks of no rain.
Yeah.
And despite the efforts of the Staples volunteers who help us water, our plants got fried. So we had to, think on our feet and what we can do to the spring, and especially with big events and fall in Westport, which is beautiful, and the winter coming up, how we can replant and bring some greenery to downtown, which we did, which was incredible. And working with local nurseries like Gilberti's, who helped us supply the flowers for the hanging baskets and the barrels. It's a lot of fun. I really enjoy it.
So why did you want to become president?
Well, I was born and raised in Westport, and it's been a place that's always been very special to me. When you're a kid, I think that the one thing you want to do is get out of your parents' house, meet your buddies on your bike downtown Westport, and go around, hang out at the library, go to get a sandwich, Westport pizza, whatever. And so I've always loved downtown. And it wasn't until I was older that I really appreciated it. I'd go see towns where my friends grew up in college and stuff like that. And they were nice towns, but you don't realize how lucky we are to have a river in the middle of our town, and the beautiful stores and restaurants and retailers, and even a facility like this with the library. It's really incredible. And when I had a career in Manhattan as a real estate broker, and I was in Manhattan for about 9 years. And when I decided to come back to Connecticut, Randy Herberson, who was my predecessor, him and I have always been very close. I actually interned for him in the city when he was working in marketing in the city. He said, "Max, why don't you join the Downtown Association? Your family's company is technically within the downtown footprint on Northern Main Street. You have the energy, the passion for downtown. Why don't you join?" So I didn't really know much about it at the time, but when Randy brought me in, I was instantly hooked. And getting to build relationships with some of the people on the board, like Annette from Savvy and Grace and Roger Leifer and David Wall. It's been incredible. And then I was quickly put onto the executive team, or executive committee as the vice president. And when Randy informed the board he was stepping down, I was, unanimously sort of voted into the presidency, which I was very honored. In the beginning, didn't really know what I was doing or what to do, but I had a great team behind me, and Randy did a phenomenal job in his 6 or 7 years as the president, and really kind of gave me a blueprint to work off of, which has been tremendous. So
You mentioned Annette Norton from Savvy and Grace, Roger Leifer, who's
Right.
a
real estate,
real estate owner.
right?
Do different people have different visions of downtown? I mean, depending on what their perception is, the big commercial property owners, the smaller ones, the restaurant people, the store owners, the shoppers.
Totally. I mean, I think everyone has their own vision for what they want downtown to be, and they want it to be just, an incredible site for people of the town or anyone in the surrounding areas to come and gather, shop, eat, whatever. I think what's nice about the board that we have is there's people from different avenues of business that have their own thought or vision for, what we can do kind of on a day-to-day. Annette brings the retail perspective. That's incredible. Someone, Roger, David, Tori, Brooks, myself, we come from the real estate and the landlord perspective. So we know it from, okay, we're going to put this tenant in and keep them happy. Well, Annette knows it more intimately from being there every single day selling, goods to people that come into the store. So she has that more intimate day-to-day experience of what not merchants, but consumers are looking for and what makes them happy, what makes them tick, what they overhear when those consumers are shopping in their stores, so that's really helpful. The real estate guys, like myself, we come in and know, okay, what can we help from maybe the beautification element? The restaurateurs know, all right, what atmosphere works if we're trying to lure people to downtown to eat and experience, and after they eat, how do we get them to go shop and stay around? Church Lane, the closure of Church Lane has been an incredible example of that. All the powers kind of coming together to say, okay, if we have chairs outside on Church Lane and someone wants to go to Monotoast or Spotted Horse, great. They're here outside. Eating outside is something everybody loves as long as it's beautiful out. That's wonderful. Now, how do we keep them there? Well, they have an atmosphere to walk around and no cars, so their kids can go into a store to go shop. Great, we can go meet them after we finish our lunch and walk around. So everyone brings their own perspective, which I think makes a wonderful recipe for making my job easy, but also giving us fresh ideas for as we plan, our new ventures.
But there's also competing demands. I mean,
Totally.
There's people who want Parker Harding Plaza to be open and
Right.
much more green. There's people who say we need more parking. There's
Yeah.
people who want a double-decker parking lot. There's people who
Right.
say ban cars from Main Street.
Yeah. No, it's funny. I mean, my joke with people is, as property manager, I'm also everyone's building therapist. And as president of downtown, I guess I'm sometimes act as everyone's downtown therapist. It's like everyone gives me their thoughts and opinions, and I selfishly want this, but I selfishly want that. Oh, I like this. You try to take all the feedback and figure out what logistically works, right? I also sit on Downtown Planning and Implementation Committee, which Randy is the head of, DPIC. And they talk about the plans for what they want the new master plan for downtown to be. So hearing the thoughts of what eventually Parker Harding will look like. Baldwin was the first project that was completed. What will Jessup eventually look like? How do you take all that feedback that I get and share that with that team and say, look, this is kind of what I hear from certain people. Some of it is a bit of a juggling act and, trying to manage expectations. This summer we had to manage with the Baldwin lot being closed and how that impacted some merchants and retailers and restaurateurs. But we worked very closely with the town to sort of stick with timelines and get things done. And we explained to people, look, it's a little bit of a pain right now for a long-term gain and a beautiful new parking lot. So it's a little bit of a juggling act trying to manage those expectations. And sometimes when you just sit and talk with people, you're able to understand more deeply, well, I really wanted this, but I understand why this works, So a lot of it is getting intimately involved with those people to manage those expectations.
So what works downtown and what doesn't work?
You know, in my opinion, the parking is something that is struggling, but I know the town's working very hard on. You know, I would love it if there was a way where there was we could take advantage of, I call them distant parking lots. You know, they're not so distant, but they're not right here on Main Street. You know, the Imperial lot. That is such a wonderful lot. How can we get people to park there, or maybe the employees of some of the stores or restaurants? How can we get them to park there to free up some of this parking downtown, so that, you know, consumers and people can go downtown to park and easily get into the stores they want to go to. You know, yesterday, as an example, I went to go do a return at J. Crew, and I think it took me about like 5 or 10 minutes to find a parking spot. Not a tremendous amount of time, but still, you know, it's good that it's busy, but still, you would like more parking easily accessible. So I think parking's something that we could work on. You know, that's I would say the one hurdle that I think that the town is also trying to work on as well. Yeah.
How do you describe downtown? If you had to talk to the Martian or the
Sure.
person from New Canaan or whatever,
Sure.
how do you describe downtown?
I mean, it's the heartbeat of Westport, in my opinion. I mean, we're very fortunate that, you know, the whole town is beautiful, but, you know, we obviously have the beach here, and it's lovely and it's incredible. Not many people have that in their town, but this downtown really is the heartbeat of it. And I would say right now, in my opinion, and at least in my 30 years in Westport, we're sort of at the peak of what downtown Westport really is, you know, in terms of the retailers, restaurants. We're bringing new life to Westport with all these restaurants that are coming into town. It's really an incredible gathering space. I mean, even the library. I mean, this is like a MIT caliber library right here. I mean, it's insane. Having all of this at our fingertips right downtown is amazing. I mean, I remember being as a kid, my parents would literally just drop us off down here, and we could spend hours, the whole day, wandering around. And now, you know, I can only imagine. I see kids all the time wandering around, bouncing between the library, Starbucks, stores. It's the same thing. And it's great to still see that happening. You know, it shows that there's still so much life in downtown and so much at your fingertips, from shopping to eating to exploring in the library. You know, it really is incredible having a performing arts center right around the corner with huge acts. I mean, Cyndi Lauper, whatever it was a few weeks ago, amazing. You know, and then even behind that, the remarkable theater. So much is available just right here, which, you know, we're so lucky to have. I don't know really any other towns that have that. And then you sprinkle in the events that we put on. I mean, a few weeks ago we had our Westtoberfest Beer Festival. How many towns do you know that are able to pull together a beer festival with 1,500 people and 71 different breweries? I mean, it was insane. Yeah. And then in Memorial Day weekend, we'll have our 50th anniversary of the Arts Festival, which I think last year brought, you know, something over 10 or 12,000 people to downtown Westport. I mean, it's insane, you know. And I think it helps that we are sort of you know, an artery of Manhattan, and, you know, a lot of people, whether they live here full time or this is a weekend home for them from Manhattan, that helps certainly. But I think we've certainly created a name for ourselves out here.
I'm going to be a little provocative here.
Sure.
You know, you mentioned growing up in Westport
Yeah.
and going downtown. You went to Klein's, you went to Remarkable Bookshop, might have already closed, but Westport Pizzeria. And there are people who say, you know, that those stores are gone, that it's just an outdoor mall. Yeah.
You know, I can totally, I would never disagree with those people. You know, there's certainly a piece of it that I miss, that mom and pop feel, if you will. You know, I mean, I remember getting as a kid, my mom would drag me downtown to, you know, one of the stores she'd want to go to and try and torture my brother buying us clothes at Gap, or, you know, whatever it would be. And then, you know, we'd go to Onion Alley for lunch, or Westport Pizza, and then she'd stop at the Liquor Locker, I think was the name of it, the wine store.
Liquor Locker.
Yeah, to buy a bottle of wine before you go home. And everyone was a mom and pop shop. And there was something that felt cozy about that. You know, there's certainly only a handful of those mom and pop shops still around. But I think on the flip side, we're very lucky to have the types of stores that we have in town now. You know, it caters to this new generation. You know, there's J. Crews of the world, and the Brooks Brothers will cater to every generation. But there are these new stores that are in here that make coming downtown attractive to a lot of people. It'd be great if there was a mom and pop store, but having these like the Lululemons or the Viore is the new name of that athletic store that's downtown as well. Those are ones that get people excited, and especially for the new
Brandy Melville.
Brandy Melville, having those brand names are huge, and especially if you're like, one of these people moving to town, coming from the city maybe. You're so used to having those at your fingertips in Soho, Madison Avenue, wherever it may be. Now you have it right downtown and at your fingertips here. It makes it a little bit more attractive when you're coming into town. But I still love during the holidays, I'll go get my holiday gift baskets for clients at Savvy and Grace with Annette. I love that personal touch that she has and the mom and pop type feel that comes with her store. But at the same time, I will shop at the big brand names like the J. Crews and Lululemons, whatever.
The J. Crews, the Lululemons,
Sure.
the Brandy Melvilles, are they invested in downtown? And by invested, I mean in the types of things that the downtown Westport Downtown Association is doing?
Absolutely. So one thing that we did is, that we are doing is, I'm trying to make what I do as collaborative as possible. I certainly don't want to be the one that just makes the decisions on my own based off what I think fits. So I try to reach out to all the merchants, restaurateurs, and get their advice. As an example, the summer shopping days. It was an event that we would host, and it's been around coming out of COVID, where we would let merchants go out onto the street. We'd shut down Main Street for, one day a month, June, July, and August, and they'd put their clothes out and it'd be a shopping sale. And, we went and we did it this year, and it wasn't really catching. And I noticed that, and I'm like, that's kind of odd. Not everyone's taking advantage of it. So we sent out a survey, and we all went and met, all the merchants. And the feedback that we were getting from everyone, it's almost as if it was their own brand, their own store. The feedback I was getting from, the managers at Sundance, the managers at Lululemon, J. Crew, all these stores, they were providing the feedback as if they own the building. It was their store. It was their clothes that they designed, their whatever, and how they felt that sale maybe impacted their day or didn't, and what they'd like to see differently. So I think that was really great. We were even talking about it before we went out and got those opinions. Like, are these people really going to care that, they maybe work for a big corporate company? Do they really care? But you could really see that they were passionate about the way that they represented their store, like I said, as if it was their brand. So that was really great to see. Even when we were, my company, SCA, we went out and replaced all the flour barrels in the baskets because barrels were kind of falling apart and years of getting beat up. Merchants would see that we were doing that, and they were so happy. Like, oh, can we help with ideas for next year's flowers, or how we decorate certain things, or do you guys care if we put flower baskets in front of our stores? Seeing that really shows that there's a passion for their store, even if they might not be their own CEO, if that makes sense.
So who comes downtown? Is it Westporters? Is it out of towners? How far do people come? And is Westport's downtown different from other downtowns in suburban towns?
Certainly. I think, who's the market for downtown Westport? I think it's everyone. Certainly a lot of Westporters, but I think there's a lot of people that travel from other towns. I was with some friends recently who were from Stamford. Like, oh, I was with, my girlfriend and I, we went downtown and went shopping downtown Westport. That's always our go-to place to go. Stamford certainly has a lot of stores available. Darien right next door has a lot. New Canaan up the road, but they chose Westport because of the retailers, the experience. They love that it's cozy, if you will. Greenwich Ave is certainly the mecca of retail. I think it's over a mile of retail right there with every brand name and luxury name available to it. But still, people are choosing to come to downtown Westport because it has kind of a cozy New England downtown feel to it, which is great. During the Westtoberfest Beer Festival, I was talking to someone and she's like, oh, I'm from Switzerland and I work on someone's private yacht as a chef. And anytime we get docked in Greenwich, I always make a point of coming up to Westport to go shopping. Like, you're from Switzerland, you work on a boat, you're parked in Greenwich, you think, okay, I can just go shop in Greenwich. No, she wants to come all the way up here for something. I mean, that was pretty cool to hear. And even my father, who's worked in commercial real estate for 40 years in town, he's always said that, downtown Westport's always kind of been a feeder market with Manhattan. If it can work here, it can certainly work in the city and vice versa. So that's a good tell for what our downtown is.
You mentioned parking before.
Yeah.
What else does downtown need? And, or what are you looking to be able to bring to downtown that's not there now?
Yeah, I mean, I think there should be more attractions that can make it easier to keep people downtown. As much as I love having the ice rink at Longshore and how cool that is, and looking out over the water, it'd be awesome if we could have an ice rink down here, maybe on Veterans Green in the wintertime. That would be so cool. Having the farmers market around the corner is great. How can we find a way to keep it there for, even longer? Having those attractions that draw people in from outside of retail, I think, is such a huge piece of it. How can we take advantage of this beautiful waterfront that we have? That you and I sitting in these chairs, we have a waterfront view here from the library. I mean, that's pretty crazy, right? And even though it's just the river, it's still incredible. How can we take advantage of that and make that more friendly, maybe with kayakers and paddleboarders and swimmers, whatever, in the spring and summer? I think finding a way to get people down here, not just for retail and restaurants and eating, whatever, is such a key to it. Because if they come down here, then they will go and disperse to those other avenues to shop and eat, et cetera. What can we do to do that? More of those attractions.
It's interesting as you're talking, I'm thinking about the proposal for the Hamlet at Saugatuck.
Totally.
And one of those ideas is to have water taxis, go up the river to downtown.
Right.
Is the Downtown Association thinking about or working with other entities in town, or
Yeah.
do you just try to protect what's here?
No, I certainly like to collaborate with other entities. And, it's funny. I think one time when you first interviewed me for one of your pieces, I said, a water taxi would be awesome. And despite the comments I got about the environment and the impacts of boating in the water and all of that, I think a water taxi would be incredible. I think that'd be great. What a cool way to connect the different heartbeats of the town together. I mean, from Longshore to Campo, you get off the train coming from the city and you want to meet your family downtown. Hop on a water taxi. You don't want to get in your car? Fine, hop on the water taxi and cruise downtown. I mean, that would be so cool to have. And, if we can collaborate with them in any way, I would love that. I think if we can, I'm a huge supporter of, Peter Gold and the transit authority that he hosts. I try to collaborate with as many different entities as possible, because we're certainly not the end-all be-all for downtown. We play a substantial part in downtown, but I'd like to be able to see what I can do to bring everyone together, because that just makes what we're doing even greater. Collaborating with you for the holiday stroll is an example, right? I mean, that's going to be pretty cool.
Fun.
Yeah.
December 2nd.
December 2nd. Yeah.
Right after the Christmas tree lighting at Town Hall.
That's right.
Wander downtown and
that's it. Yeah.
Santa and different merchants will have all sorts of stuff.
Am I allowed to ask you a question on this podcast,
Sure.
Dan? So you, as someone who's extremely involved in Westport and has such a passion for Westport, what would you like to see downtown? If I can flip the script a little bit here.
You are the first guest who's ever asked me a question.
All right.
Yeah. There's always a first time. I think the river's really important.
Yeah.
Parker Harding Plaza was built on landfill.
Mm-hmm.
Long before our time,
Right.
the river lapped up against the backs of the stores on Main Street on the West Bank. And then the parking lot was built, a sea of asphalt, and we sort of lost our connection with the river.
Right.
Personally, I would like to see that connection back. And people have even suggested, some kind of athletic fields right on the river, or walking paths. And it would mean some loss of parking in that area.
Mm-hmm.
And as you said, relocating people elsewhere to park. People are not afraid in New York City to walk 6 or 8 or 10 blocks.
Yeah.
And here, if If they can't park 5 yards from their destination, they're upset.
Right.
So how do you, to put it back to you, how do you change that mindset?
I don't know. How do you get people out of what they're so used to and what's convenient? How do you tell someone, okay, it's a snowy February day. Yeah, you may have to park a quarter mile away and walk to whichever store or restaurant you're going to. I don't know the answer to that. That's the difficult piece. I think we're in a world now where there's a lot available to us where you don't need to get in your car to drive. I think there's a lot of people that could take advantage of, maybe it's the ride sharing apps, the carpooling with friends, whatever it may be, to come downtown, to eat, drink, shop, whatever. I think that's a big question mark. How do we solve that? Some towns have done it where they institute paid parking, and they've seen a drastic change in how people park and interact. They'll have separate lots that are free, and people will go park there, but they're not right in front of the store. So is that the answer? I don't know. I think there's certainly studies and things that have happened that can shed light on that answer, but it's certainly a big question mark in what we're trying to achieve here. Yeah.
You mentioned the way that things have changed, and certainly when the YMCA was downtown, and when there were a lot of clubs and bars and restaurants and the movie theaters, and there was a lot more nightlife. Any chance that you see of getting that nighttime entertainment back downtown?
I would love that. I mean, maybe I shouldn't even say it's just my generation. I think there's a lot of people that would enjoy that. The element of, okay, you know what, maybe the kids are with the babysitter tonight or with the grandparents. Let's go have fun and go have a night and go down for some cocktails and some drinks and enjoy downtown. I think that is something that we really could use. Even something that would gather people down. If I had an instant wish of a restaurant or something that I'd like downtown, like I love Colony Pizza, A, because their pizza's awesome, but B, it's an environment where if you go there on a Sunday, as an example, and people are there, and it's the parents with their kids after little league or soccer practice, the 30-year-old and their friend or their fiance or whoever, the older people that just want to go and get a slice, and they're there and they're watching football and having a drink and hanging out, and it's sort of a gathering place. It doesn't matter how old you are, but it's cool to have because it's your sort of a little neighborhood spot, and it's right in the heartbeat of downtown Fairfield. Something like that would be cool,
Well, it used to be Ships.
Yeah, no, yeah.
Which is now Tiffany.
Yeah.
And there's certainly a place for Crystal and all that, but Ships was right there in literally the center of downtown, Post Road and Main Street.
And I think we have a lot of great restaurants that are coming in here that are catering to the entertainment life. I mean, Bill Tavy, who's a great friend, he's on the board with me. I think his restaurants are incredible. What he's done in collaborating with Joe Farrell from Walrus Alley to have music on, right there in their two restaurants. They sort of go back and forth in what night, who has what music, but it works for both restaurants. It's awesome. I mean, if you drive down on a Friday night with your windows down, you're going to hear bluegrass, jazz, rock, whatever it is that night. And it's cool because it's the first thing you hear before
right in the center of town.
You turn into town. And that's great. And yeah, it's open in 9, 10 o'clock. So it's catering a little bit to that. So we're itching in that direction. Are we going to have nightclubs and everything? I don't know. That'd be a tough one maybe. But I think we're in the right direction where people are starting to explore, and downtown isn't, totally tumbleweeds and crickets at 8:30 at night,
It's also interesting talking to realtors.
Right.
The number of people who are moving to Westport now from places like Manhattan and Brooklyn, and they want to live near the center of town.
Mm-hmm.
They want to live in those close-in neighborhoods, whether it's Gorham Avenue or Wright Street. Those used to be tougher sell because it was near downtown. Now people want to live there.
Right. No, I think that's huge. I mean, I was a residential broker in Manhattan for a long time, and walkability is such a big thing. How close am I to this subway or this shopping area or whatever. Certainly, I think that plays into fact here, especially with, a lot of these people coming from Manhattan, and maybe they were born and raised in Manhattan, so they're so used to that. Being able to walk is part of their DNA, to get coffee, buy clothes, whatever it might be. So yes, certainly. I mean, especially with everything that's going to be happening downtown, I think any real estate within a, let's call it, half-mile radius, I think is certainly going to be a hot ticket, because you can walk over here. I mean, I live literally across the river on Riverside Avenue, and we walk downtown all the time. Whether it's 90 degrees and humid or 30 and a little windy crossing the bridge, it's something we do because it's right here and it's great. Now that I say Riverside, that's another piece of the footprint of downtown that it would be great to find a way to connect it more, even though we have the bridge. I think that's something.
The West Bank with Bar Taco, and
Right.
then the other side where you've got some art galleries
Right.
and that sort of thing.
Exactly. How cool would it be to have people, be able to park there and walk across, that bridge? Even though sometimes people use it as their NASCAR speedway, it's certainly a very attractive bridge to be able to walk across with the flags or the lights or whatever, and bring people over here. How can we connect those two sides of the river?
Pedestrian bridge,
Yeah.
that's been talked about.
I know it's been talked about. Yeah, I know it's something our friend Mr. Waldman's wanted to push for a while, and I think that'd be incredible. Having something like that would be just awesome, and certainly connect people, especially with new developments going up right there. The one right there on the river, the mill around the corner. There's a lot that's happening that can start to feed downtown from other angles, if you will.
Last question.
Shoot.
President Biden decides to come to Westport and visit, and the White House calls you up and
Sure.
says, President has limited time. You can take him to 3 places.
Okay. Where am I going to take him? Let's see. So, depending on the time of day, I'd break it into a couple categories. If we're going to eat somewhere, selfishly, I love pink sumo. I'm a huge sushi guy, so I love pink sumo. But let's say he's a fan of Mexican food only. I love Bill's restaurant, Don Mimo. I think it's so cool, and he curates his restaurants in a beautiful way. And talk about an historic building and an iconic piece of Westport. There's that.
The original town hall.
Exactly. And you get to look out at the original bank, which is now Patagonia, but you get to look out at that. If we were going to go then to a retail store, I would take him to a net store, Savvy and Grace. I think it's such a cool, it's an iconic building. One of the, I would say, the original pieces of real estate downtown Westport. But she also just such a wonderful job of having goods that curate and celebrate Westport, but also support other, creators and people like that, bringing in clothes and artwork and stuff like that from people in town. So I think she certainly is an image of the retail piece of downtown. And then I would honestly bring him to the library to show him this. I mean, the fact that you can sit here like these lovely people are doing and work and read or look out at our beautiful town and the river, listen to us on our podcast, go record their own podcast. I mean, this is just, it's incredible. I mean, it's certainly, I never would have imagined it being a little kid running around here climbing on the video section downstairs, that this would be what it is today. So I would bring him to these 3 places if I had to break it down into those 3 categories.
And he would have a great time.
And he would have a great time, and maybe catch us recording here our podcast, one of your podcasts.
I could have him as a guest.
Right, exactly. That would be pretty cool. It's one of my favorites. So yeah.
Maxx Crowley, 30 years old, but an old soul who gets Westport's downtown, and is planning for the Westport downtown for the next 30 years.
I certainly hope so. But
right.
And Dan, thank you for all you do, because you certainly are an incredible voice for the town. And whether it's people that have been here forever or the newbies that just came here from Manhattan, you're the first person they say is their resource to know and get to know Westport and continue to know Westport. So thank you for all you do.
Thank you. I've great material to work with.
That's great. Yeah.
Thanks, Max, for being on 06880, the podcast.
Thank
See
you.
you soon.